So today we are going to continue from where we stopped in our FleetMS version 2. Our application still works perfectly well, and today we are going to be talking about setting up Kubernetes and deploying this Spring Boot application together with MySQL database to Kubernetes. If you remember in part 53, that was before this part, we actually did exactly the same thing, deploy this application plus MySQL database to Docker. Today we are going to be doing the same thing with Kubernetes. And this very class, I think it should be part 54 and 55, requires you have a basic knowledge of containers. Actually, you should be able to set up a Docker image, create a Docker image of your application, and also set up local Kubernetes. I've made an introductory video to get you up to speed with Docker and Kubernetes before now. Actually, I've made these prerequisite videos before now, so you can check the description box. If you have no knowledge of Kubernetes, you'll see videos to get you up to speed with Kubernetes, and then you can follow this video. So this will require that you follow the procedure. The step-by-step is also here in my website, so I'm going to open the step-by-step. So if you miss out anything, you can simply go to my website and scroll down, and you can find this link here that says Deploy SpringBoot with MySQL to Kubernetes, and then that's what we are going to be using today. So this is the step-by-step we are going to be following today. And this complete application is also available in my GitHub repository. So the application is there for you. The step-by-step is right here in my website. This step-by-step we are going to be following today is right here. So you can open it and also follow it. This is exactly what I'm going to be doing today. If you are joining me for the first time, please remember to subscribe to my channel. So click on the subscribe button to subscribe so that you don't miss any update from me. And if you have any challenges following my class, please do leave me a comment to let me know what challenges you have, and also connect with me on my social network profile, be it LinkedIn, Facebook, GitHub, or Instagram. You can also buy me a coffee. You can see a link to buy me a coffee on my website. You can also buy me a coffee because this is actually what I do. So let's go ahead to get started right now. We are going to be following the procedure. It's going to be step by step with no step skipped. So I'm going to take this away. So let's go ahead to get started right now. So first, let me just keep this open here. Okay, perfect. And I'm also going to, let me see, I would like to keep this one side by side. So that exit full screen first, and then side by side with this. Okay, so these two will be open at the same time. Let me stop this application from running because it's currently running. So just reduce this. Okay, so this is the procedure to deploy to Kubernetes. How to create a local Kubernetes, I already covered it in the previous tutorial. So please do take a look at the description box to follow the prerequisite tutorials for this one. Alright, so the first thing we need to do, actually we need to do only two things. We need to create the deployment.yaml file for MySQL, and we are also going to deploy this MySQL to Kubernetes. And then we are going to create the deployment.yaml file for our application and deploy to Kubernetes. So we should have MySQL running inside Kubernetes cluster, and also we have our application running inside Kubernetes cluster, and they are going to communicate while inside the Kubernetes cluster and not on our local machine. So this is how easy it is. The same thing you do with MySQL, you have to deploy into Kubernetes to be running inside a pod. Your application, you also deploy it into Kubernetes running inside a pod, and they are going to communicate. And there are a number of things you need to know. Now, the first thing we need to do is to create, first let me close this. Actually, I need to delete this too. Alright, so the first thing we are going to do is to create the MySQL deployment and deploy MySQL to Kubernetes. So to do that, we need to create MySQL deployment.yaml file. Now, this deployment.yaml file has a template, so you can always get the template right from my website, or you can get it from the Kubernetes website. But this one in my website is already customized to work with FleetMS and also MySQL. Actually, it can work with any application because it's just MySQL. So in your resources folder, create a new file and call it mysql-deployment.yaml. mysql-deployment.yaml. Okay. So create mysql-deployment.yaml, and this file is going to contain two things. One is going to contain the deployment specification, and it's also going to contain the service. The deployment specification specifies how MySQL is going to be deployed and run inside the container. And the service is going to expose this deployment so that you'll be able to connect to it from the outside and also from other ports, okay? And we also have another part of this deployment.yaml file called persistent volume claim. So this is more like a disk space, a storage space provisioned to store your MySQL data. So let's copy and paste. So the first one is the service. You can paste them in any way. So I'm going to copy and paste like this, okay? So this is the first part. So this is the service. It says the name of the kind is service, as you can see right here. I'm going to enlarge a little bit. The metadata, the name is MySQL, labels MySQL, type database, exposed at port 3307, target port 3307, run inside the container, port 3307, outside, connect from outside the same port, and cluster IP none. Alright, so we also need to add, let me just make sure I'm not mixing up something. We also need to add, before you add another thing, you need to add this tray dash here, this tray minus sign. If you don't add it, it will not work. I made this mistake sometimes, and now I've learned my lesson. So the next part is the persistent volume claim, and I'm also going to copy it and paste. So let me copy it and paste. Okay, so let me reduce the font a little bit. So you can see that we have this persistent volume claim. The kind is persistent volume claim. Remember, the kind for the previous one is service. Now the name is MySQL PB claim. The label is MySQL type database. Now you don't have to worry so much about this for now. Just know that this is the template you're going to be using. If you're working with PostgreSQL, of course, you know you have to change the name to PostgreSQL. So this is template, you can always adjust. And the storage, this is 1 GB of storage that's specified. And now I'm going to add 3 dash, and then I'm going to add the actual deployment. And this is a little bit verbose, but that is not a problem. It's also a template, so you don't have to worry about knowing line by line what this means. So I'm going to paste it right here. Now it's also quite intuitive. So it says the kind here is deployment, and it tells you that the metadata is MySQL database, and the strategy is recreate. When the port dies, it can recreate. And now you need to pay attention to this part. The container name is MySQL, okay? The image is MySQL, and the image pull policy is pull if not present. What it means is if I don't have MySQL in my local repository, it's going to pull it from Docker Hub down into the container. We also have some environment variables. For instance, the MySQL root password, we are going to set it to root. The database, initial database that's going to be created is FleetDB. And I think this should be it. Yes, so this should be it. And then for now, every other thing should be fine. So now we've created this deployment.yaml file. We are going to apply it to be able to just deploy this MySQL inside Kubernetes. I'm going to start the integrated terminal. So this is my integrated terminal. I'm going to just try my console. So in my integrated terminal here, I'm going to just check what services are available. So I'm going to say, alright, so I've opened my console window right here, as you can see. I'm going to play it. So the first thing I want to do is to check if there are some deployments available. So I'm going to say kubectl get deployments. And we can see that there are no deployments. There is no deployment running inside Kubernetes at this time. But there may be a service because Kubernetes actually is a service that is running. So we are going to apply this deployment, and to do that, I'm going to navigate inside the resources folder where I have the deployment. So you can see MySQL deployment inside the resources folder. So I'm going to say cd src main resources, and now I'm going to say kubectl apply -f and specify the name of the deployment, mysql deployment.yaml. So you now see that it created the three items there. One of them is the service, the deployment, and the persistent volume. So if you now say kubectl get deployment, you see that we have one deployment, which is MySQL, which is running. And if I say kubectl get services, you also see that we have one service, which is MySQL, and I can actually say kubectl get pods, and we have one pod that is running here inside Kubernetes. Actually, the procedure is also here, so you see the procedure I'm following right here. Now the MySQL database is now running inside a pod in Kubernetes cluster, and now we want to connect right inside this cluster and access this MySQL database. To do that, we are going to use the name of the pod. The name of the pod is more or less like the local host. So I'm going to copy the name of the pod, and say kubectl exec, and specify the name of the pod, and it's going to be integrated terminal, and specify the pod name, and the command to run is bash. And here we are now inside that container containing MySQL. So if I say ls, you can see that it displays the file system right there. Now to log into MySQL, I'm going to say mysql -h, the name of the container we specified when we're in the deployment is MySQL. So you can see, and that's what you're going to use as a host name. So it's going to be MySQL -u, your username is root, and -p, and the password, remember, we also specified to be root. So here I'm going to enter the password root, and now we have entered into the MySQL database inside Kubernetes cluster. And I'm going to run the command show databases to show the databases inside the cluster, show databases. And now you can see that it created one database called FleetDB. Other databases you see there, they are default system databases for MySQL. So we've succeeded in completing deploying MySQL into Kubernetes container, into Kubernetes cluster running inside a pod, inside a node. Now we are going to do the same thing for our application. So to do the same thing for our application, we first need to make some changes in the application properties, because this time the application is not going to be connecting to localhost, it's going to be connecting to another container which is inside the Minkube or Kubernetes cluster. So what we are going to do is to open the application.properties file. Now we are going to change this localhost here. This localhost here, we are going to change it. So let me just see. Yeah. So first, let's change the username and the password. So instead of this, we are going to use a dynamic value here. So it's going to be getting this value from the YAML file. We are going to put the value in the YAML file, and the application.properties file is going to be reading the values from the YAML file. So it's going to be like this. I'm going to specify db underscore username. And now I know you understand what we are going to do. I'm going to simply copy everything from here and simply paste. So copy, and I'm going to just replace this. All right, so now the username, the password, the host name, and the DB name, they are now dynamic because they will be read from the YAML file for this FleetMS. The YAML file for MySQL, we've done it. Now let's do the same thing for MySQL. The deployment.yaml file for FleetMS for the application, I'm going to create it. So I'm going to say file, new file. I'm going to call it app-deployment, lowercase app-deployment .yaml, and this will be the content. Now it has two parts as well. It has the deployment part and it also has the service part. The deployment specifies how it's going to run inside the node, and the service part exposes this deployment so that other services outside the cluster or other nodes outside, other pods outside this pod will be able to connect to it. So that's why we need a service as well. So I'm going to copy and paste, and now this is also a template. In case you are working on a different application, you can use this template and also change things a little bit. Now take note of the replicas. This is a replicas, meaning that I want 3 copies of 3 instances of this application to be up and running. The name is FleetMS version 2. The image, we've not created the image, we are going to build the Docker image. So this is a Docker image, FleetMS version v2 tag 1.0. We are going to build it after now. Alright, so now these are the environment variables we specified. Remember, we specified the environment variables as dynamic variables in our application.properties file. These are the environment variables. We have root, we have FleetDB, and we have MySQL. And this application.properties file is going to be reading these values from the app-deployment.yaml file. Okay, so I'm going to copy the service. Actually, the service is very small. It simply specifies that allow connection from outside into this pod. So the service, the kind of service, the name of the service, you can give it any name, but I'm calling it FleetMS service, and it runs at port 8080, target ports. So target port, I think you can actually leave it because we are connecting from inside to inside. But feel free to also call it 8080 as well. Okay. So yeah. So what else? Everything should be fine, and this should be node ports. All right. So this is how the deployment of YAML file for our application looks like. Now, if you look at it, the connection to the database is clearly specified in this environment variables. So I'm going to save everything. Now we are going to build the image of this application. The image is not available on Docker Hub. We are going to build it, so it's going to be a local image. So to build our image, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to delete this package here, this jar file. I'm going to delete it. You can actually leave it, but I normally like to delete it. So I'm starting a new terminal, and what we want to do now is to build the image of this Spring Boot application. First, I'm going to check available images by saying Docker images, I think. And now we don't have any image. We don't even have MySQL image because MySQL image is not available locally. It was pulled right from Docker Hub. Okay, so to build this image, we first need to package this application or to create the jar file of this application. And to do that, we use the command npm clean install. I think this should be the command. And npm clean install. Let's give a second. And specify -d key test. So this is equivalent to actually running this application by clicking on this green button, right? But if you click on this green button, it's going to try to connect to the database, which we already changed to dynamic values, and you're going to have a problem. And so we want to say clean install skip test. So it's not going to be checking for database connections. It's simply going to package this application for us. And now after packaging this, the jar file will now be available inside the target folder. You remember I deleted it at some point, so it should be available right here. It's creating it, and it takes a while, and drop down and let's see. So it should be available in here. So yeah, so it created it snapshot.jar. So I don't know why it's taking some time. So we load from disk, and then we have the jar files available right here. Okay, so the next thing we want to do now is to build the image of this application, and to do that, first I'm going to give Minkube access to Docker because we are going to build this image into our local Docker registry. So I'm going to say about Minkube Docker, and so it's going to give access to Minkube, Docker access to Minkube, and then we are going to now build this app, the image of this application. I'm going to use the command docker build FleetMS v2 tag should be 1.0, and the location of the Docker file, actually I'm going to say -t, which is the target, Docker build, so it's actually Docker build -t. Okay, so -t, that's now the image to build, and the location of the Docker file to use is the current directory. So I'm putting a full a period, and now it's going to build this image FleetMS v2 tag 1.0. How do I know that this image is built? I can just say Docker images, and you can see that this image is built right here. It says FleetMS v2 tag 1.0. I'm going to apply my console, and now we have this Docker image available. We now have to deploy this application using the deployment.yaml file. And to do that, we are going to first navigate into the resources folder. So I'm going to navigate into the resources folder. So I'm going to say cd src main resources, and then we are going to apply this deployment by saying kubectl apply -f app deployment. I think that is the name. Let me just make sure. src main resources app deployment.yaml app deployment.yaml. So now it created the deployment and the service as well. So if I now say kubectl get services, you will now see that we have all the services running here. If I say kubectl get deployment, we also have the deployment all up and running. And if I want to say, I can say kubectl get pods, and we have, kubectl. So kubectl is not kubeclt, but kubectl. And then we have all our pods are up and running. If you want to see the dashboard, you can actually say Minkube dashboard. And actually Minkube dashboard. Let's take a look at the dashboard a little later. So now we now see that the application was deployed, and it also starts up and running. Okay, so how do we know it? I can simply check one of the pods. So I'm going to copy this pod here and say kubectl logs and specify the name of the pod, and you can see Tomcat started on port 8080. So this application was deployed and it started and it's connected to MySQL database. If I go back to the database side and say show databases, and at this time the FleetDB should contain some data because this application uses Hibernate to create the database objects for the tables. So if I say use FleetDB, use FleetDB and say show tables, you can see that the tables are available right here because it's been created by Hibernate when this application started inside the container. Now to access this application, you can use a combination of the Minkube IP and the nodes port. The easiest way is to simply say minikube, to check the service. So I'm going to say kubectl get services. And now this is the service, FleetMS service, okay? So FleetMS service now is running, and this can be accessed from the cluster IP and the node port. So to open the browser and connect, access this URL with this, the IP and the ports, you simply say minikube service and specify the service, which is this, and it will open up the browser window and open up our application running inside Kubernetes. So this is how to deploy your application to Kubernetes and actually run the application inside the Kubernetes cluster. And finally, I would like to just show you the Kubernetes dashboard. I'm going to open one terminal here and let me just show you the Kubernetes dashboard. So I'm going to say minikube dashboard. And now it's going to open the minikube dashboard and it's going to tell us everything about our container, our cluster. You can see the pods, they are all up and running right here. You can see right here. And they are all green, as you can see. So I can just drag here. And you can see deployment, there are 2 deployments, and you can also check the services. There are 3 services right here. So I'm going to be stopping here. We've set up our application in Kubernetes, deploy our application to Kubernetes, and tested it to make sure it works. So we've come a long way in our FleetMS version 2. The nice part, we are going to be now rounding off gradually. We now have to do Spring security, and we also have to do JPA auditing. I'm going to be stopping here. Please remember to subscribe to my channel. If you have any challenges whatsoever, please check, leave me a comment in the comment box below. Connect with me on my social network profile, and I'm going to help you. Feel free to also find it step-by-step in my website. You have all the steps, so you don't have any reason to complain. You also have the GitHub repository. Application is complete right here. My GitHub repository, I'm just going to show you finally before I leave. So in my GitHub repository right here, you have FleetMS version 2. You can clone it and use it locally. So let's see in the nice parts. I remain Kindton the Tech Pro, and I'm always there for you.